At the beginning of the 19th century, one man's name came above all in Europe: Napoleon Bonaparte. He was already the most celebrated commander in Europe after his glorious Italian campaign. The following year saw his rise to power as Consul of France, and by May 1804, he was the Emperor of the French. However, this would not be welcomed by the rest of Europe. Great Britain had been in a war with France since May 1803, and her Prime Minister William Pitt the Younger was putting a tremendous effort to form a new coalition against France. To succeed, he used his diplomatic abilities with mastery, along with the financial resources of his country. Although Napoleon tried to prevent it, he could not stop the Third Coalition from being formed. Tsar Alexander I of Russia was feeling uncomfortable with the growing strength and ambitions of the French Emperor. He allied with the British, as he was promised £1,250,000 for every 100,000 men he would raise. It was not only Alexander who disliked Napoleon. Francis II, the Austrian and the Holy Roman Emperor, was already seeking an opportunity to avenge his losses in previous wars. Having violated the Treaty of Lunéville's article of separation between France and Italy by crowning himself as King of Italy in Milan, in June 1805, Napoleon also announced the annexation of Genoa. With the participation of the Austrian Empire, the Third Coalition's main powers finally emerged. Sweden and Naples would be the supporting pieces of this alliance. On the day such a formidable alliance against him was being built, Napoleon's head was busy with planning the invasion of Britain. Since 1803, Napoleon had been drilling his army in the camp of Boulogne for his greatest enterprise. Yet, the mobilization of the Austrian army would force the French Emperor to change his plans. An army of 95,000 men led by Archduke Charles from Italy, another 70,000 men force nominally under the command of Archduke Ferdinand but in operation General Karl Mack von Leiberi from Germany, and a supporting force of Archduke John were posing a serious threat to Napoleon. He could not ignore the reality, so he abandoned the idea of invading Britain and turned his face to continental Europe. The War of the Third Coalition was begun. In the opening phase of the war, the coalition seemed the favorite. In addition to the planned main Austrian strike, they would attack from two more destinations to Napoleon's empire. One from the north, the other from the south. Nevertheless, things would not take place as they were drawn on the table in reality. The preparations for the joint assaults on Hanover and Italy went incredibly slow. Hence, it was the Austrian Empire at first hand to deal with Napoleon. In the summer of 1805, the Aulic Council of the Austrian Empire chose their main theater of war as Italy. This decision was taken due to their previous experiences from the first two coalition wars, as both times the setbacks in the Italian front were their principal reason for defeat. They thought that Napoleon would again attack from here. The thing they did not know was that this time Napoleon would assail from the Rhine. 53-year-old Karl Mack von Leiberi was an experienced officer. He was the one who presented the report stating that the Austrian army was ready to fight the French. As the Emperor's brother Archduke Charles was dismissed due to his reluctance for war, he was now the main commander of the Austrian army. That summer, he brought a new system of organization with 4 battalions out of 4 companies instead of the old one. However, the lack of time made it impossible for the Imperial Austrian army to get used to this new model. By contrast, Napoleon would try his new war machine called La Grande Armée for the first time. Implementing various military reforms in his army, Napoleon divided his main force into 8 corps. Corps mostly consisted of 15 to 30,000 men, and each of them had their own infantry, cavalry, artillery, and above all, their own staff. For the command of the corps, the emperor relied on his skilled subordinates. This system would provide Napoleon with a profound advantage of speed and flexibility. Different from the classical behavior of advancing in a strong but tighter and slower body, Napoleon could spread his corps to the different locations of the map. This would allow him to have a better sight and to show a wider presence. If one of his corps was attacked, by Napoleon's own calculation, it would be able to fight alone for up to 24 hours, and meanwhile, the other corps would be able to consolidate in the field of action. La Grande Armée started their campaign on the 23rd of August, as Emperor Napoleon dictated orders to his corps to lay along the River Rhine. To keep an eye on Britain, he left Marshal Brune with a force of 30,000 men in the camp of Boulogne. Marshal Massena was ordered to defend Italy with his 50,000 men. General Saint-Cyr with the occupation of Naples with his 20,000 men. To hide his moves from the enemy, Napoleon banned all the French newspapers from writing a single word about the army. He also ordered his chief of staff, Marshal Berthier, to conduct an intelligence system about Mack's army. On the other hand, aware of the Bavarians' treacherous attitude against the Austrian Empire, Mack ordered a march on Ulm to subdue them. The Austrians were promised by Tsar Alexander to be supported by 2 armies up to 75,000 men in total. Both armies were to be commanded by experienced soldiers, General Kutuzov and General Buxhausen. As the Allied grand strategy required, Mack would hand over the command to Emperor Francis after the Russians joined him to start their invasion of France. Yet, for Mack, there was a second danger in addition to Napoleon's unexpected assault from the Rhine. The Austrians and the Russians were using different calendars. Tsar Alexander had promised his allies that Kutuzov's army would arrive on the 20th of October. But the Austrians, ignoring these differences in calendars, did not understand that the Russian army would actually arrive in Ulm at the beginning of November. By the end of September 1805, as the Bavarian army withdrew north without combat, Mack's army was holding the positions of Biberach, Stockach and Memmingen. On the other hand, Napoleon's Grande Armée had arrived at their primary destinations. On the 26th of September, the Emperor himself joined the army. He seemed dissatisfied with his army's march. The corps of La Grande Armée had serious difficulties with the quality of roads and continuous rain. Since the magazines were telling nothing about the army, the marshals had difficulties with the organization of logistics. Although Marshal Berthier stated that, in the war of invasion as the Emperor made, there would not be any magazines, but only the lists prepared by the marshals, the French general staff mostly failed to arrange the lists properly. Yet, Napoleon could not waste any time since he had to eliminate Mack before the Russian army's arrival. Hence, he kept giving orders for new positions. Supported by the Bavarian troops, Marshal Bernadotte's 1st Corps to Ingolstadt, 2nd Corps of General Marmont to Mannheim, Marshal Davout's 3rd Corps to Neuburg, Marshal Soult's 4th Corps to Donauwörth, 5th Corps led by Marshal Lannes to Günzburg, 6th Corps of Marshal Ney to Münster. On the road, Lannes and Ney would exchange their destinations. Such a gigantic involvement would certainly catch Mack's attention. So, to deceive and distract his foe, Napoleon ordered his cavalry reserves commander Marshal Murat to cover the army's movements with 3 cavalry divisions. The Austrian general staff was baited. Mack's subordinates convinced him that what they saw on the north of the Danube was mere feints, and Napoleon would assault from the Black Forest. So the Austrian general decided to hold the southern part of the Danube River. On the 6th of October, a division of the 4th Corps led by Dominic von Damm defeated the Austrian vanguard at Harburg. Hearing of this, the Austrian garrison of Donauwörth started to destruct the bridges. However, supported by Joachim Murat's cavalry, Soult's forces arrived in time and seized the city. Hearing this incident, Austrian General Kienmeyer had escaped towards the east. The next day, Napoleon arrived in Donauwörth, which was now his headquarters. He believed that Mack would try to break the encirclement by an attack on Lech section, so although they were already having so many hardships, he wanted his marshals to move even faster to prevent his enemy's escape. It was a common saying among the ranks of Grand Armée nowadays that the Emperor invented a new way of fighting, using his soldiers' legs instead of bayonets. On October 8, Lannes and Murat made a joint attack on the isolated corps of Auffenberg and easily defeated them by taking at least 2,000 prisoners. The remnants of the Auffenberg's corps withdrew to Ulm. That day, Mack was urged by his staff to retreat towards Tyrol. But Mack had no intention of damaging his honor, and he planned simultaneous assaults on the French from different sides. However, his enemies were faster. One of Ney's divisions had attacked Günzburg. Although the Austrians destroyed the bridges to cut the French attack, Mack saw this as an opportunity to break the envelopment, so he ordered the repair of the bridges to start his own attack. Yet, this was a disastrous decision, and as soon as the bridges were repaired, the Austrians were defeated. Mack ordered a retreat to Ulm. After the Battle of Günzburg, Napoleon thought that Mack would retreat towards Tyrol. Therefore, except 3 of them, namely the 5th, the 6th and the reserve cavalry, he decided to concentrate his other corps to the east. While Bernadotte was ordered to march on Munich and take over the Bavarian government, the others would remain in Lech section. Napoleon himself would make Augsburg his new center of operations. Marshal Joachim Murat had been assigned as the temporary commander-in-chief on the Ulm section by the Emperor. Although he was a brilliant cavalry officer, this task would prove beyond his depth. On the 11th of October, with the intention of concentrating his forces to destroy Mack's army completely, he ordered Marshal Ney to move 2 of his 3 divisions to the southern bank of the Danube. Ney objected, stating that, in due course, General Dupont's division would be isolated from the rest of the army. Nevertheless, the lieutenant obeyed his senior. In fact, Murat's great error gave Mack an invaluable opportunity to escape from Napoleon's grasp. Very soon, 25,000 Austrians were attacking General Dupont's division of 5,000 men. Yet, Mack made a worse blunder than his foe. Due to Dupont's great command, he thought that he was facing an advance guard rather than an isolated division, so he fought excessively cautious. By nightfall, although suffering heavy casualties, Dupont had withdrawn along with thousands of Austrian prisoners and 8 guns. Mack again ordered a retreat towards Ulm. However, when he learned the fact that Dupont left his position and there was a gap between the French line, he thought to march on Ratisbon to converge Kutuzov. But this time, supported by Archduke Ferdinand, his subordinates convinced him to rest his army before marching. This disastrous decision would cause the Austrian army to starve since their supplies were about to end, and they lost their last chance to escape. As Mack was again in Ulm, Napoleon understood he was wrong with his prediction that the enemy would try to retreat towards Tyrol. Moreover, he got a letter from Marshal Bernadotte warning him that the Kutuzov's army was coming closer. This caused the emperor to worry, so he quickly ordered Davout's Third Corps to get closer to Bernadotte. Napoleon needed an urgent victory as he never did. He decided to take the command in person on Mack's side. To convince Mack to stay in Ulm for his devastating blow, he planted the Austrians with a false intelligence telling them that the British made a landing on France, and a coup took place in Paris by using the French prisoners and deserters. Mack and the Austrian staff believed in it since it was a common narration among the captured French soldiers. On the 13th of October, Napoleon arrived in Pfaffenhofen. He paid harsh reprimands to both Murat and Ney for what happened at the Battle of Haslar-Jungingen. Then he immediately ordered Murat and Ney to crossing of the Danube for the relief of Dupont's division. On the 14th of October, at Elchingen, Ney found the bridges demolished and defended by 9,000 Austrians. The marshal quickly ordered the repair of the bridges, and then, like a thunderstorm, captured 2 enemy regiments. Following Ney's victory, Marshal Murat used his bridges and quickly crossed the river. He reached Dupont's position at a critical point, while General Vanek of the Austrians was launching a new attack on the French. Together with Dupont, Murat drove the Austrians away to Heidenheim. Meanwhile, on the southern bank of the river, consistent defeats, being trapped, hunger, and exhaustion were causing the sunk of the Austrian army's morale. Archduke Ferdinand, along with many subordinates of General Mack, had left the army to escape. Nevertheless, the dashing Murat would not allow most of the fugitives to find their way by capturing them on the road. Moreover, he would capture more than 20,000 men, including 200 officers and 120 guns. Already by the 17th of October, Mack was left without any hope. With General Marmont firing his guns from the north, and Marshal Soult marching to his south, he was assured that there was no way of breaking this encirclement. So he conditionally accepted the surrender if the Russian army did not arrive in 7 days. For these 7 days, he would open one of the gates of the city for the French. Napoleon already knew that the Russians were unable to save Mack. Moreover, as the Stuttgart gate was opened, Ney's corps started to steal the properties of the Austrian army. The Austrians were not having enough strength to do something against it. Finally, on the 20th of October, Mack decided to face Napoleon for his army's ultimate capitulation. This was a humiliating defeat for the Austrians. Mack's reputation was severely damaged. The French emperor was describing his opponent as poor and looking at him with pity. His rank would be stripped as he returned to Vienna, and he would be imprisoned with the conviction of dishonor. With the cost of insignificant losses, Napoleon had taken more than 60,000 prisoners and destroyed an entire enemy army before allowing one another to join it. By his own saying, he had beaten the Austrian army simply by marching. The Third Coalition, by the 6th month of the war, had taken a devastating blow. But still, the best was yet to come. Austerlitz.
À la belle vie que l'on mène dans les hussards, dans les hussards. À la belle vie que l'on mène dans les hussards, dans les hussards. Le hussard au cercueil, le hussard au cercueil. Même après qu'il a tourné, ne s'écrit encore avec orgueil. à la belle vie que l'on mène dans les hussards, dans les hussards, à la belle vie que l'on mène dans les hussards, dans les hussards.